Welcome to the Arbitrarium. I'm your host, Garrett. The world is described by some as a, quote, fuck-to-death pile of amalgamated dumpster fires, and anyone can see the not-so-slow moral degradation caused by those bastards who are presumably responsible, and they always get away with it. Why should anyone need to engage with such a world? There is good news. You don't have to. Never before have there been so many options to mentally escape the soul-crushing cavalcade of ejaculatory prolapse disgorged by talking heads the world over. The overwhelming popularity of science fiction and fantasy over the past 2 decades in particular shows escapism has never been more appealing. Has the world become too much, or are we just too infantile to gaze into the irresistible shit maelstrom without flinching? Here to help us grapple with the intricacies of escapist media is longtime listener, first-time caller, David Perry. Mr. Perry, we'll start with you. What is escapism?
What is escapism?
Yeah,
I mean, usually when we're talking about escapism, it tends to be, it's like not really a spectrum, but there's intensities of it. But in general, it's just trying, like when you engage in some kind of, usually it's entertainment of some, like a book or a TV show or a movie or something, and you're doing it with the intention of getting away from reality, because in one way or another, reality is, I mean, maybe it's kind of boring to you, or maybe you've got a lot of problems that are, weighing a little bit too heavy on you, so you need, to distract yourself for a while, something like that. That's on the more common end of it.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, sometimes when we talk about escapism, we're talking about the more extreme end of it, where it's like, you cannot handle some part of reality to the extent that you have to shield yourself from it and bury yourself in entertainment media or even ideologies or something like that. It doesn't have to be entertainment. It could be anything that, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like with something like nihilism or something like that, you could argue that some people go toward nihilism as an escape from the responsibilities of if your life is meaningful, if there's actually some kind of purpose behind it, or maybe even you could say it's like maybe if they're, as opposed to Christianity or something like that, where it's like, no, you have some kind of divine purpose, and the things that you do here matter, and it's hard to navigate whether or not you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing because it's not as clear.
Mm-hmm.
And so you sort of dart away from that and you go more towards something nihilistic so that you can remove that level of transcendent responsibility and do basically whatever you want and say that your personal morality is the only one that really matters. Like you're the last word on that.
Could you look at escapism as if I'm engaging with this, at least I'm not hurting anybody?
You probably could, but if you're that far along,
mm-hmm.
if you're that far gone, I would say that to me, that sounds like it qualifies as repression. Because if you're escaping so that you don't hurt someone, generally what that means is that you have a desire to hurt people and you're not you're not adequately
I'm not
paying
doing
attention
anything wrong is a better way to put that. If I'm just passively absorbing media, I'm not necessarily making the world a worse place. I'm just kind of existing.
Theoretically, do you have a wife? Do you have a girlfriend? Do you have a family? Do you have
all
people?
Of the above.
Yeah. Do you have people that are reliant on you to live in the real world at least some of the time? To bear responsibility and do the things that you're supposed to do? Then maybe escapism you could make an argument that escapism, and to a certain degree, and at that pitch, is, you could say that it's morally wrong. You can make an argument for that.
Well, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
You can make you can make an argument that something is morally wrong. It doesn't necessarily be anything could be morally wrong or right. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a good argument, but you could make the argument.
Mm-hmm. A lot of times
I tend to look at escapism as a morally neutral thing. Something everyone does unless it's like you do it too much.
Yeah, because my knee-jerk reaction when it comes when it comes to escapism for me, my first reaction is, oh, I'm not an escapist, but then it's like, I've built entire fictional worlds, and I like being there sometimes more than I like being in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. But, you make sure that you don't get lost in those types of worlds,
Always have an astronomicon to guide you.
Yes.
Powered by the Emperor's light. To kind of, I'm going back to, right back into the fantasy world.
Yeah, that GIF meme of the baby that walks in and goes, "Whoa, nope," and walks back out.
I don't think I've seen that GIF meme. So why do you think that this media has been so much more, seemingly much more appealing over the past 20 years, give or take?
Oh boy, okay.
Has the world actually become a amalgamation of burning of shit-powered dumpster fires?
By our own hand, maybe. I'm not going to say that it's like we realized that it was like that, because I don't think that it is inherently like that. I think we make that out of it more often than not. But as far as why do I think escapism is much worse now? Absolutely. As far as why, there's a lot of reasons, but I'm of the belief that the increase, the decrease of a meta narrative that keeps people sort of connected to each other is a big part of that. Because when you lose that, because only for a long time it was Christianity here, and it's been Judaism in another place, or Buddhism in another place.
Is it a decrease or dissolution?
Say what?
Is it a decrease in these meta narratives or dissolution? As in they're dissolved?
Yeah, I would say not disillusion, but dissolution. Yes, I would say that. That's probably a better word for it. Yeah. But once you get rid of that, you lose the ground. You lose the moral ground that most people need in order to feel like they can navigate life meaningfully, because without some kind of moral foundation, you don't really know you don't have any context for whether or not the meaning of something is good or bad, and so it becomes difficult to decide whether or not you should do this thing or that thing. There's a lot that goes into that, but when you lose that, people tend to get polarized, and because they still need something like that, they build their own meta-narratives, and each one of those ends up with its own group. I mean, we see that with politics more than anything else right now. But they end up in their own little groups, and because they're
those bastards in the Han shot first.
Yeah. But they get so dependent on those things, because now that's the substructure. It's that God-shaped hole that you hear people talk about. That's the polarizing force behind it. Because the moment you start questioning something like that, you're not just questioning somebody's politics anymore. Because back in the day, you could question somebody's politics, but maybe they still had that. Maybe
you're questioning their very reason and for being an orientation in the world.
Right. And so I think at the really, really bottom foundation of it, I think that's a big part of it. Maybe the biggest part. Because when the world stops making sense, and you don't believe, some people believe that you can manifest meaning on your own. It's that same thing, that same thing I was talking about with nihilism, where it's like you can make up your own morality, right? You know what's good, you know what's right, you know what's wrong, because you just do, you know. And people think that can work, but
only if you can hold yourself accountable.
And even then, that's not... okay, that's true, but in holding yourself accountable, you have to actually believe that you are capable of legitimately holding yourself accountable. Yeah, I don't think most people can do that.
I don't either, but
yeah,
in an ideal world, maybe people could.
Well, yeah, in an ideal world, and that's why we do the escapism thing. It's because we can't... Because that's a really...
we're looking for that ideal world?
Maybe? I think so. I think we want something like that. And... like you were talking about the MCU, not in the podcast, but before we started, you were talking about the MCU being sort of the modern paragon of escapist media. And Marvel harkens back to those much clearer lines of good and evil, and it tries to play around in the middle in certain places, but for the most part, like you said, you know who the bad guys are, you know who the good guys are. You like some of the bad guys, and because they jump up from the line, across that line. But throughout most of Marvel films, you still know what the difference between the good side and the bad side is. And so we sort of latch onto it because it gives us that structure back.
And they're also the good guys, and they're bland enough that you can attach any real ideology you want to them.
Well, Captain America, I can definitely see that. I don't think you can... It's weird for me to say that anything Robert Downey Jr. has ever done in his life has been bland.
No, I mean just the actual voiced beliefs of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
We stand for good things, or
Yeah.
I was a bad guy, now I stand for good guy things.
That's dark.
Which, okay, but what makes a good guy bad guy? You can imprint anything you want on that.
Yeah.
And it'll still hold up under scrutiny.
Well, I think that's what they tried to explore with the Civil War thing, because you could, at least, and that's one of the reasons that was my favorite of the movies. It was like you could see why each side thought the way that they did, and they had reasonable arguments for them. And it just came down to which one you personally actually would have backed in a situation like that.
With a healthy nudge towards Cap's side.
I mean, that is how it ended.
Yeah. And throughout the whole
It had to end one way or the other.
It makes Tony look like a sellout.
I mean, kinda. Part of the movies is that they kind of make Tony out to be a sellout, but he's not, and you understand. Like, he explains himself better than that. Does that make sense?
He rationalizes better.
Well,
and this is from how the movie is written, how I'm taking it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I wonder how much of this is directly related, the rise of escapism as the, I don't want to say primary genre of cinema these days, but definitely the biggest moneymaker we've seen in a good long time.
Mm-hmm.
Until recently. How much of this also is directly related to the prevalence of the internet in our lives? Because prior to 2007 even,
Mm-hmm.
the internet was around,
Yeah.
but it was still kind of a niche thing.
Mm-hmm.
People didn't live online
No.
as much as they do now, and after 2007 and the rise of social media.
Yeah, it was pretty much just AOL chat rooms and, hey, did you see Pam and Tommy?
Yes, I did. Frequently. They were over for cocktails the other day.
I'm sure
What are you
they
talking
were.
about? Cock and tail. What I mean by that is we have and I'm going to reach back to 90s vocabulary here, the internet, or the information superhighway going right into your brain. And because now you have access to the entirety of human knowledge at your fingertips, except stuff that's like region locked and behind the Great Firewall of China, humans aren't built to handle that.
No.
We have a Stone Age brain that gets occasional software updates in the form of culture and ideology.
We have a threshold for how many viable moral systems we can hold in our head at the same time.
Right. We're not, well, I was about to say we're not quantum computers. We might be. But that's a whole other podcast. You got to get that line in there at some point.
What's it, like 9 petabytes or something like that?
I don't know.
Something like that.
I'm talking about processing power.
Oh, well.
Not storage.
Right.
Maybe the world looks like it's a fucked to death pile of amalgamated dumpster fires because prior to the internet, we only got to see what other people thought was important for us to see.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get it.
So with that, all that shit being streamed right to us, and we can get on and find anything out that we really want within reason, everything looks a lot worse than it is. It's like watching news commentary. Oftentimes, it's the news is what's posted on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not the news. Not going to what was actually going on. No, this is what was said about what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we get most of our news from commentary, editorials,
Yeah.
than we do from direct news sources. Like if I want direct news information, if I want to go, I guess at least somewhat mainstream, I'll like watch ABC or something like that, ABC World News or something like that, where it's not as clear that there's a bias, and I feel like I'm getting a little bit more than just whatever the information is, and a little bit less Greg Gutfeld or MSNBC or any of that bullshit.
Yeah, and it also seems that the news story is more the person reporting on the news.
Yes.
Than the actual what's going on.
Well, it goes back to what we were talking about, well, right before the podcast. It's the cult of personality that we put on everyone. Anyone who has commentary about news, or anyone who's involved in making the news. We have politicians, we have writers even. I mean, we build cults of personality around everyone that holds a position like that. There's cults of personality around Tucker Carlson. There's cults of personality around Wolf Blitzer. I mean,
the people that you've mentioned, Tucker Carlson, Wolf Blitzer, Greg Gutfeld, Rachel Maddow.
Yeah, Maddow.
They're not reporters.
That's true. That's true.
They're news people.
They're anchor people.
Yeah, they're anchors. They're not reporters.
Yeah. Do we have a famous reporter anymore?
I mean, the only two reporters that I followed, and this is you're going to find out where my political leanings lie. And this was years ago, before they started doing the commentary thing, because frankly, it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
Was Tim Pool and Lauren Southern.
Yeah.
And the reason I started following them wasn't because they were commentating on the news, but they were going to Europe.
Yeah.
And were on the ground when shit was going on. And recording what was going on. It seemed to be the most reliable thing I could find because they were there.
Yeah.
Now, neither of them are doing that. Because, as I said, it's easier to just commentate. Yeah,
and one of the problems with that is generally what you're getting, it has even more middlemen. You're getting commentators who are reading from different articles, and those articles were written by somebody who maybe read different articles, and like the degrees of separation between the event and you. And this is something people don't really think about. This is kind of off topic, but not really. One of the things people don't really ever, maybe they don't care to realize, but you've heard me talk about it a few times. You're at the bottom of the media luge. I don't know.
The news luge.
Yes, you're at the bottom of the news luge, which means there's the thing that happened, and then there's the people who saw it, and then there's what they tell the people who ask them about what they saw.
Then there's the people who curate that.
Not even that yet. Then there's the thing that what those people write about what those people told them, and then there's the people who curate what was written. And then there's the people who edit that. And then there's maybe even another person who rewrites it, of course. And then it gets to you somehow. Like, you're at the bottom of all these...
Then there's the anchors. Then there's
the
commentator on the anchor.
Yeah.
Then there's you.
Yeah. And what makes that particularly bad, and the way I usually put this in perspective for people, it's like, most of us have been in a situation like this, where you're at work, and you and five of your coworkers are around when some accident happens. All five of you were there and saw it with your own eyes.
Yeah.
And yet, after it happens, and one of the bosses come around to ask you what happened, unless it's a really, really simple thing, like something fell off of a shelf or something like that, all five of you have a slightly different story for what happened. And those are the eyewitness people. And it's well documented.
Eyewitness testimony is notoriously inaccurate.
Yeah. And that's literally...
because it's the only thing considered direct evidence.
Yeah. And that's literally like ground zero. You were as if you were there when it happened and saw it with your own eyes from beginning to end. And you still have that degree of differentiation or degree of variability between the stories that you're hearing. And now you're filtering that through God knows how many people, and you don't know what biases are going to come up in there. And they work for a company that probably has some kind of bias. And by the time it gets to you, it went from, well, here's the meat to here's the stew.
Yeah.
Like, this is all the crap that everybody else put in there for flavor.
Well, and even with arguably the most reliable source of information, video.
Mm-hmm. Oh, God.
Unedited video. I ended up getting into a shouting match with one of our good friends over the Ukraine thing.
Yep.
When it first kicked off, and there was a video of an armored fighting vehicle driving down the road, and a car driving on the other side of the road, and this armored fighting vehicle runs into the car, veers into it, and just annihilates it.
Yeah.
Our friend was like, the Russians are so horrible. Look what they're doing. They're just running over old dudes in cars.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to explain to her, you don't know what happened here.
Yeah.
But she was convinced this was clear as day. This was the Russians just committing war crimes.
I had a similar
Come to find out,
experience a couple of days ago.
Come to find out, as more information came out, that was not a Russian vehicle. That was a Ukrainian vehicle. The driver lost control and just so happened to hit that guy. And I was trying to explain to Carolyn, that this is a solitary vehicle driving down a road. This is not how military operations are conducted. She wanted to hear nothing of it.
Yeah.
She has a bias against the Russians. I get it. She grew up in the Cold War. I'd probably have a bias too. But that's just an example.
Well, and that's one of those situations
You're
where...
taking direct video evidence.
Yeah.
The hardest evidence we can come up with over any event. And there's still so many different ways to interpret it.
Well, it's worse than that. There's so many different ways to interpret it, and then there's also how big of a camera do you need to get all the context? You know what I mean? Like, not literally how big the camera is, but you know what I mean. Like, what are you not seeing?
Right.
Because video evidence is what killed my faith in any media information, any story I'm ever fed. Like, absolutely fucking killed it. And that was with the Covington.
Yeah,
kids.
I figured you were.
Yeah, that
I remember that one.
That
really
one
got to
broke
you.
me because, man, I can't tell you how many times I looked like a damn idiot because it seemed so clear what was happening, and then I would say something about it, and then it'd be like, oh, there's more to that video. Here's what you didn't see. And then it'd be like, well, shit, I guess this is... And then you'd see something else, and it's like, oh, fucking shit, okay. Can't trust anything because you don't know what the context of it, and it's hard to know how big that scope needs to be for you to really actually understand what the hell it is that happened.
There's what's happening off camera is often more important than what's happening on camera. So I think that might be, to bring this back to escapism.
Yeah.
I think the information overload, and that's been getting thrown around so much, it's cliche at this point.
Let's come up with a neologism, something more interesting and aggressive.
Data blast. The Peter Northian data blast. That's not a mental image. I don't know what is. That we're not equipped to handle. Maybe in the next generation we'll be able to handle it better than us because they grow up with it. But
well, this actually goes right back to something that we haven't mentioned Peterson yet. So here we go. Something that he's talked about before, where it's like when a person is subjected to a certain amount of chaos, that exposure to it has a positive relationship in the proper sense, a positive relationship to how much anxiety or stress you're going to feel in that moment. So just a little bit of chaos is usually something that we find interesting, right? It mixes things up a little bit. When
Blood for the blood god.
Yeah. But when it's a lot, when you're like beset on all sides and completely inundated by it, that's when you get like that panic.
When you get Slaneshi in your face.
Yeah, you get that anxiety, that panic attack mode, that fight or flight response sometimes. Although I think...
I get that throwing a dinner party.
Yeah, as we've seen. But when that happens, like, what your brain literally does is it tries to do everything at the same time. And that's where you can't. It tries to look at everything at the same time because the idea is it's trying to process what's happening because it thinks you're in danger. Because there's so much of what you don't understand around you that it's trying to process everything that you don't understand, and there's a lot of that.
So the easiest coping mechanism, at least on a society, is to let's go watch bad movies.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the escapism part of it, but it goes back to that what we were talking about with the human. Like, people are not wired to be able to handle that much information.
Yet.
Because it's... yeah, yet. Because it's not even necessarily that the information has to be right or wrong or whatever. That actually doesn't matter that much as far as how it affects you. Because you could be inundated by nothing but correct information, for lack of better words. Well, just hypothetically speaking. But if there's so much of it, you don't know if it's correct. And you don't really know what to do with it. Because you're just... You're trying to grab at it and put it in places, and you don't have context for all. It's all that chaos. Whether it's right or wrong, that doesn't actually matter.
You can only fit so much the Northian blast in at once.
Yeah, whether it's right or wrong.
You don't have time to grok.
Yeah.
I love that word. Thank you, Heinlein.
It's become an official word, I think, actually.
It is.
Yeah, it's a very useful word.
It has, I think, for about 10 years been an official word.
Yeah, but I think I think you're right about that. I think that's what's happening is that it's just so much all at once that we don't know how to process it properly, and so we get anxious and polarized because we become desperate for grounding, and then we escape when it gets too much because our subconscious is a lot smarter than we are, and it knows when we're full of shit. And I think that's where a lot of the anxiety comes from. And then you go and you say, well, you know what, I want to watch Spider-Man because I don't have to think about this shit anymore.
Right. Spider-Man.
Phil Spider-Man. So, yeah.
Phil B. Spider-Man. Well, it'd be Peter B. Spider-Man.
Yeah, so it would be Peter B. Spider-Man.
Yeah, kind of going off that as well. I wonder if another part is there's also a shrinking... There's a lot of pressure to... You have to have an opinion.
Yeah. What is that phrase? What is it? When you don't take a side... It's a famous line where it's like, if you don't take a side, you're complicit. That idea.
Oh, that's actually that relates to Orwell.
Is it Orwell? Okay.
That is Orwell. He was speaking at a he was representing the let's go to war with Hitler side of things. And I'm paraphrasing, but right now, pacifism is inherently pro-fascist.
Right.
Because if you are not with me, you are in fact against me.
Yeah.
Or for all intents and purposes against me now. So, yeah. We're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to gather my thoughts, because I think I have a question that might be good to ponder here. But until then, please enjoy this message from our sponsor.
Hey
there, folks. You tired of paying wild prices for a peep of pleasure? Well, come on down to Jackie Hancock's Secondhand Porno, where our secondhand smut is second to none. Flip through thousands of titles in our bottomless well of gently used lootery. From discount cunnilingus to budget bondage, these bawdy bargains beat the busty bucks of our first-hand competitors. The tags in our mags and flicks will have you stacking your thrifty picks of our naughty recycled erotica. And don't forget, Tuesdays are ladies' night, so strut on in and get the full minor for half the price. Tired of shelling out hardcore cash for softcore porn? One man's trash is another man's pleasure here at Jackie Hancock's Secondhand Porno, just off Highway 40. Look for the Winnebago behind the lion's den.
All right. So what I was going to say before the break, and I needed to gather my thoughts on this, which is why we went to the break, is because going back, because everyone has this Peter Northian data blast going on, and you're reaching out for anything to orient yourself in the world. It could be something small, like my dog needs to eat more cheese, or it could be something big, like let's nuke all of China. There's this pressure and this almost desperation to take every little thing and turn it into, give it the gravity of, should we go to war with the Nazis?
Mm-hmm.
Like Orwell was talking about in that quote.
Yeah.
And that's where the pressure to form an opinion and form it now comes from. Because you either need to validate my own position by agreeing with me, or you need to give me someone I can fight against.
Yeah. Everybody needs a devil.
Right.
Well, yeah, and it's like you take every little part of life. You take every little part of life, and every little part of it has to be cross-referenced against whatever your moral compass is. Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, and that attaches itself to your religion or your politics or whatever that happens to be.
We're seeing things that would otherwise be considered non-moral being given moral weight.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I mean, chicken sandwiches.
Yeah, chicken
sandwiches. That's one example. I mean, to be fair, you can make direct comparisons to why that. See, that's what makes it so tough. Is it's like you can make a direct comparison to why a person shouldn't eat Chick-fil-A chicken sandwiches. It's because if you buy it, the money goes to the company, and the company funds anti-gay organizations. Apparently, I haven't actually looked into it, but that's the accusation. Mm. An indictment is not a conviction. But yeah, so you can see how it connects back to it. That's the hard thing. It's like, it's not that you're wrong. It's like,
yeah, it's
more like the question is more nuanced than that. It's like, it's not that you're wrong, but is it worth this amount of ire? Like all the trouble it's going to cause you and the relationships that you can have with the people around you. Mm. Like, is it so bad that you can't exist in the same space as this person calmly?
I was trying to think of the most innocuous, there's no way you can moralize this. And the first thing that popped in my head was how I mow my grass, or if I mow my grass. And then, oh wait, no, there's a rabbit hole to jump down on that one, because my lawnmower is gas-powered.
Yep. Yep.
And by using the gas-powered lawnmower, I'm killing the planet. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe I should switch to an electric gas mower, or an electric mower. Oh, well, now you're just helping out the coal company because they provide the power and they're polluting. And it's like, oh my God. Fine, I won't cut my grass. Well,
then the HOA is going to be on your ass.
I don't have an HOA.
You don't,
God.
But yeah.
But
your neighbors are going to start looking at you cockeyed.
Yeah, then someone's, well, you're just not taking care of the property that you should be taking care of, and you're not. An appeal to tradition fallacy. Mm-hmm. Or I'll take care, I'll water. Well, now you're just wasting water on the lawn. That
was a thing in California.
Yeah, and we're in Indiana, and we don't have water shortages, not that I'm aware of. Maybe we do, and are keeping it hidden. And you can't trust anyone.
Forget it, Jake, it's Indianapolis.
So, yeah, I can't come up with I can't find something you can't jump down a rabbit hole on.
Are you having a cheaty, like a sort of like cheaty breakdown?
I'm looking at my grass, and this broke me.
You made a decision? Yes, I want to cry. Because what that made me think of specifically with Chidi was the how he kept going back to, I know why I'm here. It was the almond milk. It was the almond milk.
Referencing The Good Place.
Yeah.
For those who haven't watched it, it's a good show. You should take a look at it, or don't. Do you? I'm not going to try and press you one way or the other. Watch it. So we're gonna try and bring it back to escapism, and we found a little article that we'd like to bring to your attention to help you identify whether or not you are one who indulges in escapism.
Yeah.
It's a 10-point list.
Yeah, and this, the place is lifehack.com, so it's not like this is something pulled from Google Scholar, but they're actually pretty good questions, I think. So, they've been screened by the Arbitrarium hosts.
Keep your, get out a flashcard and write yes or no, and give yourself 1 point for saying yes and no points for saying no, and tell us what you got.
All right, well, I'll read the little intro here, because it's really short, just to kind of prime you for it. If you have a tendency to avoid reality by fantasizing about your dream scenario, then chances are you are an escapist. But it's not all bad being an escapist. Like everything else in life, it does have its good and bad traits. But believe it or not, there's an escapist in all of us. But some of us tend to take escapism to the next level, and this can be quite bad. In this article, I will identify 5 good and 5 bad signs of being an escapist.
Who wrote the article?
There's one sentence left, hang on. So if you want to know whether you are an escapist, check these 10 signs below. Thanks, Cosmo. Okay, so the writer, the website is Lifehack, lifehack.org, and the writer of this particular article is Mayur Mistry, M-A-Y-U-R-M-I-S-T-R-Y, so I'm pretty sure that's Mayur Mistry.
Okay.
Okay, so, the good signs. 1, you daydream. A lot.
Yes. I'm going to give myself 1 point. Play along at home.
Yes. I'm not sure if I do or not, to be honest. Like, I think an absurd amount all the time, but like I don't think I've ever stopped thinking ever. I've tried.
My thinking is often done in daydreams.
Yeah, but I don't fantasize during the day, that's what I associate with daydreaming. Like you kind of fantasizing about something. Like you do that. Like I do that sometimes. Like anybody else, if somebody pisses me off during the day, I might end up in the shower arguing with somebody who doesn't exist, so I can win an argument because I feel like shit. That happens.
It's the only argument you can win.
Yeah.
With yourself.
Yes. I don't know about that.
All right, Tolstoy.
But I think a lot, but I wouldn't call it daydreaming because it's not, there's no real fantasy element to it.
That's a no for you?
I'm going to say no for me.
Okay. So 1 point, Garrett.
Okay. Number 2, you are very creative. I mean, yeah.
I can't say that I have a level of creativity to me, but I wouldn't say I'm very creative. Mm-hmm. That would require someone else to make the judgment call there, because I don't feel I'm qualified to judge that about myself.
Yeah, I mean that's like my knee-jerk reaction to any compliment or like insinuation about what my character is like or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you look at the signs, and I'd say it's pretty reasonable to say I'm a pretty creative person.
Yes, I'd say you are.
I draw cartoons. I write. I teach how to draw cartoons and storytelling. Like I mean, that's what you do. So I would say that's reasonable.
I tend to take things that I've already seen and then smash them together in new and exciting ways.
All right, number 3. You want to live life on your own terms.
Yes.
Yeah. You so probably more than me, but I definitely have that.
I'm a bit more of a contrarian than you are.
Yes. Yeah. I don't really have much of a problem with authority until it's stupid to me.
Well, you don't have much of a problem with authority until it's actively telling you need to do this and not explaining why.
Yes, the not explaining why is very important. No, you got to give me a reason.
And even then, I need to examine that reason, and it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to do what you tell me to do.
Right, and that's assuming that I have time to do all that, because in a setting when somebody just tells me to do something and there's some urgency to it, I'll go ahead and do it.
Yeah, we were walking through the park at 4 o'clock in the morning, and we talked about that.
Yeah.
There's 2 situations in which I will more or less automatically comply or want to be told what to do, and that's I don't particularly care about it, but someone else I does care about it quite a bit, and they want it done a certain way. Okay, tell me what to do. I'll do that to keep you happy.
Right.
And the second is, I care about what's happening, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but there's someone around who does. Mm-hmm. then yes, please tell me what to do because I don't want to fuck it up.
Yeah. Teach me, senpai.
Yes, teach me, senpai. Teach me hard.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty good. I don't have any special answers on that one. But, all right.
For once.
Yeah. Brevity is not my thing. You love to travel the world. I probably would, but I haven't, so I can't say that I do.
See, I take issue with the travel the world.
Should I actually read the little blurb on this one for clarity? Okay, yeah. You're quick to be bitten by the travel bug, and by traveling it is not your usual going to a beach or partying type of vacation, although you won't mind doing that now and then. Your idea of traveling is to explore and to embrace the vibrant culture that the world has to offer. And since you are an escapist, you'll be easily drawn to pictures being posted on Facebook where your friends are showing off their latest traveling adventures, and you can't help but to feel slightly envious.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I'd say that fits me too then.
But I hear travel the world and it's like, go to different countries. It's like, yeah, but I'm fine with exploring stuff that's close.
Yeah.
But I can't act on the travel bug as often as I really wish I could.
Oh, yeah.
So, point for both of us on that?
Yeah, I think that's
right.
reasonable.
We're not
it's
even.
It's more about exploration than it is about just traveling the world for the sake of traveling the world.
It's less it's more experiencing.
Yeah. All right, so that's number 4. And number 5, so this is the last of the good signs. You enjoy reading fiction like fantasy and sci-fi.
Yes.
I enjoy it, but it's not my preference.
You still haven't finished the sci-fi books that I've given you.
No, I haven't. If I open a book these days, it's usually Kant or Kierkegaard or something philosophical right now.
I don't want to give you a point on that because you still haven't finished those books, and I kind of want those books back.
That's fair. Although I did open The Old Man in the Sea the other day.
Okay.
So if that's something.
It's not science fiction or fantasy, though.
No, it is not. Okay, so that is all of the good signs. Now here are the bad signs. So maybe we want a different check mark system for this because it has different connotations to it. Okay, cool. So bad sign, well, I guess this is number 6, but it's bad sign number 1, just for context. Your desire to quit your job may lead to you underperforming in your job.
Yes.
If I'm in that situation, yes. I don't think I'm in that situation right now, although there are things about my job, even though I love my job, that I worry about underperforming in because there's so many other things I want to do other than just teaching.
Well,
and it mounts.
I think that's a different context than the question being phrased.
Yeah, you're probably right. So I guess I don't get a point on that one.
The only thing I can think of as far as what you've told me is you start underperforming in the job was you eat the fish.
Oh, yes.
And that was more just to have fun because you weren't going to be there much longer.
Yeah. I mean, even when I know I'm not going to be at a job much longer, the only thing that's ever really made me actively underperform is when I'm treated like shit at a job. Like, if you've given me no... And even then I feel bad about it, but if you've given me no reason to respect you as someone who cares about what I'm dealing with in my job or something along those lines. It's not even really that. It's really mostly if you're just a contentious prick about everything. If you're just an asshole to me, then I don't feel an obligation to do my job any better than anybody else there.
Right.
I'll still do it at least minimum, but no more than that usually. I got more important things to think about. So that's really the only situation where that might be true for me.
No, I hate this. So you've seen me do it.
Oh yeah.
When we were working at the stadium.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's not even just I hate this. It's like it goes full on complete contention, misery, like hate and misery.
I'm gonna sham my ass off. I'm laying down in a filthy stadium bathroom because I'm done cleaning railing. Using a packet of toilet paper as a pillow.
Did you actually do that?
You were there. You said, "Oh, you're shamming real hard" when I put
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
I didn't. I was highly entertained.
What I remember is being in the bottom part of that area. When we had to clean with the Zambonis, the Zamboni area. I remember that, and I remember your feet had started getting to you, and you were like impossible to be around. You were just like really, really, really angry the entire time we were there, and I think that lasted for a few days.
It's because my feet fucking hurt, and then the last straw was, we were hired on to be trained as supervisors.
Yeah, and then he gave it to that.
He gave it to
that lady who didn't do anything ever.
Didn't do anything, and then.
But she flirted with him.
Yeah, and at one point, it's like we're trying to figure out how to do something, and you have an idea, and the manager, you start to say to the manager, "Can I be in charge for a second?" That was the nope. We're done.
Yeah, no, I don't do pride games. I'm happy. Nothing good can possibly come from this. So number 7. You may be addicted to video games.
Yes.
No, I don't think I got that problem. Although when I start to play a video game I really like, I have trouble pulling myself away from it to do things that I need to do. But that's pretty few and far between. Okay, that was an easy one. Number 8. You realize the world is a harsh place.
Yes.
Yes. I'm not sure I'd feel.
I don't
feel
know
like
how
that's
that's
a
a
negative. Yeah, it's like it can be, but it's not inherently a negative.
That's more how you express that realization than the realization itself.
Well, yeah, I think it's that people get this idea in their head that when you realize that things are harsh, it must mean that it's going to make you unhappy or that you can't handle it. That's not the same thing. Understanding that your situation or life in general is a relatively difficult thing to get through, and to put it mildly, that's not the same thing as saying, oh, okay, well, then by extension, you must be miserable most of the time. It's like, that's not the same thing.
No, it's not.
All right.
If you're, all right, the world's a harsh place, so I'm just going to be a right bastard about everything, because, my little actions can't make anything worse. Or, the world is a harsh place. Maybe I should go volunteer to Soup Kitchen to help out a little bit. It's how you express that realization. I think is more important than the realization.
Well, we have that phrase, embrace the suck. Like, you can actually enjoy things being not fun. Like, there's an element of that to it.
Embrace the suck is less have fun with it and more just fucking get on with it, dude.
Yeah.
There is an element of having fun by not by the suck, but having fun in spite of yourself.
Yeah.
Same thing. I went on.
Maybe for me, it's almost like a storytelling thing because so many things for me are narrative. But like, I can actually derive some joy and entertainment out of being miserable.
Yes.
And it's not that I'm like wallowing in the misery, but it's like I can see how this would be funny from if I weren't the person involved in it. You know, like this is good for storytelling.
Well, we were talking about this last night too. Sometimes you don't want someone to come by and ruin your bad mood.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm in a bad mood. The last thing I want is to be confronted by some chipper bitch.
I think this one's like the closest to a directly to escapism than maybe any of the other ones. That one really, really. I mean, I think that's at the heart of most of it when it comes to escapism. And honestly, I think it's not even. Sometimes it's that the world is a harsh place. I think maybe not most of the time, but definitely to a degree, it's also the world can be a boring place most of the time, because when you go to a movie or you play a video game or something, you're indulging in the structure of a narrative. You're indulging in the structure of a story, and it grounds you in. Or
in a video, just interesting mechanics.
Yeah, it grounds you in something, right? And when you're not doing that, when you're out here in the real world, it's like, okay, I don't know where the beginning of this thing is necessarily. I don't really know where the end of it is. I don't know. I have no context for what exactly might happen next. I don't know if, like in the context of the game or whatever, I have some moral structure that I can kind of play around with. In real life, it's like I have that, but it's all in my head. I'm not taking it in from some outside source that I can accept as a matter of suspending my disbelief or something like that. So the real world is more bland, depending on your life. But for I think a lot of people, it tends to be a little more bland because you don't know what to do with your time all the time.
See, when you were talking about that, something that this probably isn't healthy, but something that I tend to embrace in my life is my real life is not at work.
Mm-hmm.
Work is just what I do to get money to pay for my life. My life is not slaving behind a machine that makes envelopes by hundreds of thousands an hour.
Mm-hmm.
It's swinging a sword, aiming a rifle, doing a podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
And admittedly indulging in video games for far too much. I kind of zone out at work.
Yeah, actually, kind of along those lines, this is something I always thought was kind of interesting. Books tend to get a lot of really good credit, regardless of, like, just books in general.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you read. That's great. You must be a smart person. I don't know, man.
I wonder if that's a hangover from like medieval days when
I mean, maybe, I don't know.
very few people could read.
Yeah, people treat books like they're always good and always, going to educate you, like teach you something good. They're always edifying. It's like,
yeah. when we moved into this house, we had this massive leftover collection of old science fiction books from my dad.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have a place to put them. So, okay, we'll put them up on like Facebook Marketplace. We'll give them away.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't even charging for them. No takers. No one wanted to take them. Until, all right, if they're not taken in 3 days, we're just going to burn them. When we said we were going to burn them, people came out of the woodwork. Don't burn the books! I don't think that this 1950s science fiction story that no one even remembers the name of the author of
right.
is like...
It's not like we're burning, like Muslim cookbooks or something like that, where you can see people getting really angry about it, even though
we're not burning Bibles or Qurans or the Constitution or
right.
Medical textbooks with the intention of reverting us back to the Dark Ages so more people die. No, it's just we have no place to put them, and this is fun information, but it's not really useful.
Mm-hmm.
And there are plenty of prints of this out there, losing a print.
Yeah.
Of sometimes a pretty shitty sci-fi story.
And if you burn them, they don't end up in a landfill somewhere, I mean, there's...
Or getting burnt at a landfill.
Right.
So, once we said we will burn them if no one takes them...
It became a moral issue.
Within 6 hours.
Yeah.
Within 6 hours, they were gone.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this moral, don't burn the book. Don't be a monster. It kind of reminds me of the the science in the movie is awful, but Day After Tomorrow.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they're in the library and having to burn books to stay warm.
Mm-hmm. Where do you start?
Atlas Shrugged. On the Fire.
Everything by Ayn Rand. The Fountainhead. Well, that's ironic.
Not that I have anything...
Fahrenheit 451. That's very ironic. An Inconvenient Truth. Get all those.
Eureka. That was a movie. That wasn't a book.
I thought it started as a book that he wrote. I'm pretty sure that started as a book.
I could be wrong. I don't follow Al Gore.
That Gore wrote. Yeah.
They
made a movie out of it. Yeah, Al Gore.
Al Gore.
Bob Dole doesn't need this. Bob Dole.
Throws Al Gore onto a fire.
Oh.
All right. Moving on.
Okay, so number 9. You tend to procrastinate.
Yes. It took me 2 years to get this podcast to the first recording.
I have a weird relationship with procrastination. I have an urge to, but I can't bring myself to do it. If that makes sense. Every time I start to, it's like I got to be doing something. There's a million things that I have on my list of things that I should be doing. I guess I better do one of those.
I think the procrastination with me is, okay, I need to take a break. I've been into something for too long. Need to take a break and just sit and be.
Yeah.
And
I've been trying to do that more.
And then the be just becomes, this is what I'm doing. And now I don't want to go do the other thing because it won't take that long. I always find excuses to not re-engage.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I have this I get into something and then it's borderline obsession with it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I pull myself back. Okay, I need to take a breather, and then I don't go back to it ever again.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, it's because of the shiny object syndrome I have.
Yeah. I get that way with projects sometimes that I'm working on. It's
a miracle that we've been able to record as often as we have.
Well, it's not just work. It's us doing what we always do, which is have conversations.
To take over the world.
Yeah. Try to have conversations about random things, except we just record it and then 15 people listen to it.
On YouTube. I don't know what our Spotify audience is.
I can't remember. It's larger than that. I know that.
Update for everyone. We are now number 5 in the world.
Oh, yes. For Ethics and Technology.
Ethics and Technology podcast on FeedSpot.
FeedSpot, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
We are now number 5. We've come from number 8 up to number 5. By the end in 2 years, we will be number 1 at this rate.
Yep. That's the plan. To do nothing and rise through the ranks like we've done in the past.
We would be perfect in Hollywood.
All right, and the last one, the last bad sign, and this is a big one for escapism. You can't face uncertainty. That's the chaos stuff I was talking about.
I don't fall into that.
I don't either. I've been forced to face uncertainty most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I have a compulsion to face uncertainty.
Well, okay. I might fall into this category. Because it depends on what you mean by face it. If it's stare at it and really look at it and, I don't know, do something about it, I can do that, but I'm so used to just in the Army, I was never certain I was going to survive the next 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of, all right, this is part of my existence, and that carried over into civilian life, where, yep, bad shit could happen at any time.
Mm-hmm.
Might as well just keep going about what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, yeah, you end up with, here's where it gets kind of weird, you end up with emotional context.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is, like, in a situation like that, you were in a place where the worst thing that could happen, conceivably, was death.
Not necessarily to me, but yeah.
Yeah, like that wasn't just a like a thought experiment that most people have at home. Like, yeah, I could get hit by a bus. Like, no, there are people that aren't that far away from me who want to kill me.
Actively
trying to kill you.
Yeah.
And so many other things, when you return from a situation like that, pale in comparisons.
Yeah,
it's a lot easier to let things roll off your back and move along.
We've only got $30 in the joint checking account. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got this.
Yeah, and see, like, the same thing happened to me with the whole derealization thing. After that, I was like, okay, lots of things aren't nearly as bad as I thought they were, because now I have a much broader context of how bad things can get.
Yeah.
And like, there are things worse than death. There are things worse than death.
I do have a problem with not knowing.
Yeah. If
there's something that can be known, and I want to know it, I kind of need to know it. Mm-hmm. This was a few years ago, I had started getting into astrophysics.
Yeah.
And
oh boy.
Without getting too much into the technical jargon, black holes suck in light.
Mm-hmm.
Or light can't escape from them.
Yeah.
And the photon is the carrier particle for the electromagnetic force.
Yeah.
It's also a particle of light.
Mm-hmm.
If photons can't escape from the event horizon of a black hole, how does a black hole have a magnetic field if the photon is the...
How does it have a what field?
A magnetic field.
A magnetic field, okay.
How can it have a magnetic field if the carrier particle of electromagnetism can't get out of an event horizon? That kept me awake for 2 weeks, trying to find that answer.
Didn't you ask an actual astrophysicist?
I asked multiple.
And they came back saying, we don't know? Wasn't that the answer?
The first one was a professor emeritus. So he was a retired guy.
Yeah.
Sent him something, and he's like, "First, you're a writing student?" This isn't really my field. I was more on the quantum side of things. So I'll refer you to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote him. And he told me, that is one of the questions at the forefront of the field.
Mm-hmm.
You're a writing major? Yes, I was in your class. Oh, right.
Oh, so this was a teacher you
Yes,
actually
this
had.
was a teacher I actually had.
Okay.
He wasn't a professor. He had a PhD, but he was like, I am not a professor. I'm a lecturer. I don't do any research.
Right.
He reads research. He just doesn't do any.
Right.
So he got back to me after like a week, and yeah, we don't know. That's a good question. We're trying to figure that out. When I found out, okay, no one knows, then I calmed down. But that caused some stress. I don't know if that falls under can't deal with uncertainty. It's
I don't think it does in the context of this, because I feel like in the context of this, I mean, we could read it like we did the other one, but I think it has more to do with being unable to emotionally handle chaos in your life. Like when problems arise, that's chaos, right? Mm-hmm. And you can't handle that, so you bury yourself in something that you're escaping in, like a video game or a movie.
In the case smoke breaks a lot more frequently.
Right, but in the case that you were just talking about, you did the exact opposite. You ravenously went searching for the answer. That's the opposite of not being able to face uncertainty. That was very directly going to find the answer, not avoiding it. And that's what I was identify with that.
I was afraid I was going to get blown off.
Yeah, well, I can understand that.
Because I'm not a researcher. This isn't my field of study.
Yeah, and
a formal study.
Right, and were you even worth their time? Like,
right.
That's a legitimate question.
And I was pleasantly surprised to find out, yes, I was.
It was probably the nature of the question that made them, and the fact that apparently they both asked you, "You're a writing major?"
Yeah. Back when I was still in college.
Yeah. Okay, so we should probably more explicitly tie this back to escapism.
So, first we got to tally up the scores here.
Okay, yes.
All right. On the positive side of escapism, I've got 4. You've got 3.
Okay.
On the negative side of escapism, I've got 4. You've got 1. Does that mean I balance out to 0, or...
I think it means you're pretty purely an escapist, because you've got a lot on both sides.
Yeah, 20% no response, and then split down the middle.
Yeah. So I'd say you're definitely an escapist. I'm not sure if my score would say that I am or not. If I am, I'm more on the positive end than the negative end.
I mean, you had an answer to...
Only 4.
You had a yes answer to only 4, which isn't even half of them, so...
Right. Okay, so, I mean, that's a failing.
Mild escapist tendencies.
Yes, okay, I can believe that. That makes a lot of sense to me, because you've known me long enough that I have a compulsion to face reality head on, to my detriment at times. Like, I need to figure things out that can't be figured out.
You have a hard time coming at it sideways.
Yeah, I'm pretty much running down the middle, trying to find out what the answer to whatever it is I'm looking for the answer to.
I like coming at things sideways. It's fun.
Game at me sideways. Okay.
There were 5 of them. Yeah. So please, if you were playing along at home, send us your scores. Tell us what you think. Are you an escapist? Are you not?
Yeah, we will read them, and depending on how we judge you, we may dox you. I haven't decided yet.
If you have any good comments, we may feature it in the next episode we record.
That's true. Not all jokes aside, we might actually do that.
That wasn't a joke at all.
Oh,
There's no might. We will.
Oh, okay.
If we get
will.
a comment we
will.
like, we will we will feature it.
Fair enough. Okay, so break number 2. Are we there?
I think it's time for break number 2. It's been 50 minutes total.
Yeah.
All right.
Something like that.
See you in a bit.
This is an Arbitrarium private service announcement. Announcement for Walter Cochran. Your casket rental has expired. Please return it to the facility dry and swept of soil and corpse fluids or risk losing your deposit. Thank you.
All right, and we're back. So for this segment, we're going to get a little more individual personal opinion and less societal observation.
And now the Arbitrarium gets intimate. As you can see, our guest for this segment is Daniel Day-Lewis.
So, Dave, what makes you want to escape from reality, and where do you go when you do it?
I'd say the thing about reality that gets to me the most, there's two that I can think of. One, people are far more contentious with each other than I can bear very often. Mm-hmm. They argue about things that's like, for me, most things can be dealt with without being pricks about it. But a lot of people kind of like being pricks.
It can be fun.
And it's never really appealed that much to me. Now, sometimes I get angry enough that I can enjoy being a prick, but then I feel so guilty about it later that it's like a hangover. And I hate it. But yeah, I think that's part of it. The the aggressiveness of reality can be a bit much. That's definitely one. And then the other one is existential dread. I mean, it's kind of a epidemic at this point, the existential crisis and existential dread. But that one may not count because generally when I'm in that sort of mood, I do what we talked about earlier, which is, okay, I need to open a book and try and figure this out. Mm-hmm. You know, open a book or just think about it. Sit and think about it for a long time.
You give it a good hard think.
Yes. Give it a good hard think. Yeah, I'd say those are probably the biggest. Well, you know, and then you have... All right, I'll say this. There's technically a third one, but it's really just the amalgam of the types of crises that wouldn't normally bother me if there were only one or two. Mm-hmm. Or even three or four. But when it becomes a situation where it's like, okay, so all of my parents are sick and older, and their mortality is becoming clearer and clearer. That's one thing. I have a million things on my plate as far as work. I've got, I'm teaching, which means I'm grading all the time, and I'm also trying to write several books. And
I'm
also
grading all the time.
Yes. And I'm also trying to write several books, and also I've got comic work to do, and also I've got pitch work to do, and also I've got
the most important
writing for Mallory to do, and
editing of the Arbitrarium.
And also I've got the Arbitrarium and doing edits for that.
Should take precedence over all things.
And also I've got family who are having serious struggles, and also I've got friends who are talking about killing themselves, and also, all of these things. Like, it just, at a certain point, it's like, okay, what parts of my life are going well? Oh, and also I haven't dated anybody in 7 years, and also, like, it's all of the things. It's hard, when it becomes hard for me to find something good that's going on, then it's like, okay.
I need to be Solid Snake for a few hours.
No, that's the thing. I feel guilty escaping, which is probably what makes me not much of an escapist. Mm-hmm. And so what I generally end up doing is just stopping and being miserable and thinking until I don't feel that way anymore. Because if I walk away from it, then I feel like it's just piling up. Like, it's festering, and I can feel it. I know that it is, and I can't bear that. So I try to give it a good long think.
Okay.
So when I do indulge in escapism, it's my favorite one, obviously, is to write Mallory Bash stuff, or write one of my other things for one of my other series concepts or stories. I really, really enjoy doing that because I know that world. There's something really, really relaxing about the idea that I can become somewhat insular in a town, or in a county, really, that I've built myself. And I know, maybe it's a spin on, like, a god complex. I don't know. It could be.
Did you like SimCity as a kid?
I actually did. I did enjoy SimCity.
There you go.
The only thing I didn't like about SimCity is that I couldn't go down into like the individual level. I played it on Super Nintendo. You were always at like kind of in God mode because you're the mayor, right?
Right. Well,
in the SimCity I had, you were
super powerful mayor that can summon monsters to destroy the town.
Yes. But yeah, so it's going into worlds that I maybe it's because I have so much control over it, and I don't. Maybe that's what it is. But I've built. In my head, I like being able to walk around Moonblush. I like to be able to, like, imagine sitting on the couch in Mallory's house, or cooking food, or going through Brookwood Forest, or visiting the Dreaming Tree, or something like that, or imagining what characters are doing when there's not a story there. I love having those moments, because it's not just about writing stories for me, although I like doing that too, but really humanizing the characters to the point that sometimes there's not a story and they're just doing things. Like if Mallory might be sitting down and watching TV in the crawl space, because there's that space under the stairs where there's TV and a couch. Or, any one of those types. Maybe Mallory's at school and Odrin's sitting around playing the piano. Like those kinds of things. I like the idea. And one of the reasons I think I like that is because in that world, people aren't as terrible to each other. They can be, but it's not as prevalent as it feels like it is in reality sometimes. In that world, people can talk to each other. In that world, issues can be resolved reasonably. Sometimes they can, and that makes for really interesting stories. But most of the time, the characters can interact with each other to the degree that they can solve problems interpersonally, and that seems like something that is very, very rare. Like you watch movies and you watch TV shows, or you play video games, and characters are actually much more honest with each other than they are in reality. That's the weird thing. You watch a sitcom or something, the characters actually say what they're thinking and they say what they're feeling, and sometimes it's not direct, but you still get more of a sense of it than you would if you were talking to somebody in reality, because what happens in reality is most people are afraid to tell each other what they actually think. It's like when we were having that conversation last night. Now I'm not going to bring anything specific because that was kind of a private conversation, but what it boils down to is I need to be able to talk to someone about the things I don't like about them, and for them to feel like there's not maliciousness behind it, because there's not. And I expect that from other people too. And I make sure that I can handle that, because I think it's important. I think that's part of what, maybe when I was younger, being more of an escapist then and watching a lot of TV and a lot of movies and things, I think maybe that's what I really latched onto with it, is that even when things got really, really bad in a movie or a TV show, that primary cast could still engage with each other genuinely. And you don't get that in reality nearly as much as you do when you're indulging a story. So, yeah.
Okay.
How about you?
So, what makes me want to retreat from reality? If I were to boil it down, it's when I feel like I'm not being taken seriously. Maybe not seriously. When I feel like I'm not being listened to. When I feel like I'm actively trying to reach out and getting my hand swatted, like I don't have time for you. That kind of thing.
Is it kind of like when, maybe I can put this in some words, it's like, oh, well, that's just Garrett being Garrett, and it doesn't sound like whatever Garrett is a particularly good thing?
Right.
I know that feeling, yeah.
Yeah. I've got two options at that point. And that's engaging in catastrophizing and brooding, because that is... I brood. I brood really well.
Yep. Yeah, I know that.
I will seethe. You might be able to see, heat lines coming off me. I've gotten better about hiding that I'm seething, but I'm still seething. And I know that's not good, and I don't want to be there. For the most part. Mostly. Or it's, alright, I need to withdraw. Because, if I try to have that good long thing, it's going to turn into catastrophizing. And I tend to go into worlds that are very well fleshed out, have a lot of lore behind them.
Mm-hmm.
That well developed, and I don't mean that as in like, okay, and it has all these things. Well, what makes a well developed world for me is it's not just that there's all these things, there's also the interconnectedness of the things.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can just start throwing shit into a world, throw the whole kitchen sink in there, but unless they're interacting with each other in that world, then what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
You're building more of a shitty role playing game than you are a world.
Yeah.
So, and I also go into science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about this during a break. I tend to look at fantasy or the fantasy genre as more concerned with moral commentary, how to live a good life, and what makes a good guy and a bad guy, versus science fiction, where it's kind of, well, most science fiction, everyone's a little bit good and a little bit bad, capable of both, which is more grounded to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more concerned with ethical commentary. What actions how do you handle any individual situation versus how to just be a good person.
Mm-hmm.
They're related but different. Those are the worlds I tend to retreat to, and I will retreat to them until I'm no longer brooding. It allows me to step back and kind of remove the emotion and just analyze what's actually going on, or at least as close to what's actually going on as I can reasonably engage with.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I need quite a bit of time in that other world.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm withdrawing, then just let me withdraw, please. I'll be back. Please hang up the phone. The dial tone is...
Please hang up and try your call again.
Yes.
If you need help.
Call the FBI. Although not today. That's getting into something else, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, if we can get an FBI agent on the Arbitrarium, that'd be awesome.
We could probably get an FBI agent emeritus. I'm just going to start using that for any retired profession.
Emeritus. I also... the worlds I withdraw to also tend to be pretty violent.
Mm-hmm.
Warhammer 40k, BattleTech, Star Wars. You can say a lot about them, but they're not peaceful universes.
Would you say that you get there's catharsis to that?
Catharsis, maybe, in the same way that watching a train wreck is, all right, yeah, things are bad, but at least I'm not getting eaten by Tyranids.
Yeah, yeah.
At least my entire planet isn't getting nuked because, well, someone else looked at them funny.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that's another thing about it, too. Like, thinking about the characters, like when I'm creating characters and I'm creating the world, it's like, I can make these characters very, very bad, for lack of better words, morally bad, I guess. But I can put them in situations that will make them better.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't do that for other people in reality, you know. And I'm not sure, you know, in reality, it's like...
I don't think I'd want you to have that power.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. Because...
You'd be a bad god, Dave.
Yeah, I was going to say, as I tell my students, your job as a writer is to be a bad god. You know, put your characters through the worst possible thing that they can go through, so that they have to face all the things that they're afraid of and move through it. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what you do in a story as a writer. And
with a big catch, you can kill a few of them off.
Yeah, yeah. Some of them don't grow, and that can be difficult. Mm-hmm. As a writer myself, because I tend to like giving characters opportunities to become better. It can be more difficult for me to write a character who won't. And I think if I want to write a really complex character, that has some feeling of it, like it's grounded in reality, what I'd probably do is write a character who doesn't do anything good until it's too late, and then they try to, but
Too little, too late.
Too little, too late, and it's going to kill him in one way or another. So you've got a little bit of a redemption arc there, but it's still a tragedy. It's a bittersweet sort of ending. But I like those types of stories.
Yeah. Yeah, the story aspect is... I actually find myself not quite gravitating towards the stories when I'm trying to escape. Or maybe, little novellas set in the world. It's more... It's more like studying the world as it is, not so much the stories that make it up. I'm trying to grasp with this. It's like I don't tend to go to universes that have a central narrative.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about something like Warhammer 40k,
right.
It doesn't seem like there's a central narrative.
One of the problems with 40k is it's stagnant.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that the universe is stagnant in the grimdark because it is. I mean, it is just pure setting.
Yeah.
There are stories that make up in how it got that way, but it's locked.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's going anywhere because, Games Workshop can't afford to make anything happen. It'll piss someone off, and then they lose customers.
Mm-hmm. So what do you mean by like how the world works and not the narrative of it? What do you mean by that?
I'll dive into the political intricacies of the Free Worlds League. How does that state function?
Okay.
Or how does a blaster actually work?
Mm-hmm.
Show me the cutaway. Can this work? I go into the minutia.
Okay, would you say that might be because that's the part of the thing that you're escaping to that has concrete answers?
Maybe.
That you don't know, so you have that sense that I can figure this out if I just learn about it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like in reality, it's like there's some things that you can't figure out, no matter how much you try to learn about it.
Particle physics, that's one of them for me.
Yeah, and I've heard that you get frustrated when you get deep enough in that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I will get frustrated trying to figure out how the standard model all puts together, and it's really not that difficult. It's like this should be simple, but it's not.
Yeah. I can't remember who I was talking to, but I was talking to somebody sometime over the past week about... Actually, it was Carolyn, that's right. I was talking to Carolyn about how you and I, you get really, really frustrated when we're having a philosophical conversation, and then we actually come to a conclusion, and you didn't come to it. Because I've heard you say this before, and you're not the only person that does this, where it's like, well, we can't even go anywhere from there. And I was telling Cam, I was like, yeah, that's the idea. We're looking for an answer, and then when we find it, we do something else.
When I say we can't go anywhere from there, I think it's more you can't do anything with it. I'm concerned with the utility of an answer.
Right.
When it comes to philosophical questions. I'm very much utilitarian.
Mm-hmm.
A pragmatist, I think, is the actual school of thought.
Right.
Where I'm all about collecting information just for its sake, but when it comes to the application, that's more important than just knowing. Mm-hmm. With those kind of big questions.
Yeah. And I'm fine with just knowing. I like the idea of that.
I'm all for going mining on the Renegade asteroid, but I better find some gold there.
Well, maybe it's a difference in what we value, what we think the gold actually is. I don't know, maybe because, for me, it's...
If I can apply it to my own life to improve it, that's the goal. That is the goal.
Reasonable. For me, it's... Did I figure something out that nobody else could figure out? Because I was willing to think hard enough about it and long enough about it.
To quote Star Trek Picard, the sheer fucking hubris.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons I really, really like it.
I seek betterment, you seek validation. Civil War. Bringing it back to the overrated MCU.
Okay, now to be fair, and this is probably because I am more narratively driven when I'm doing those things. In the back of my head, what I'm really thinking is, if I can figure this out, I might be able to alleviate not only my own existential dread, but it might help somebody else alleviate theirs. Like when I've talked about the derealization thing, and how at a certain point, because I gave it a good long think, a good long crisis think.
Frantic.
Yes, frantic, panicky, certainly. I was able to ground myself back in reality by understanding that in order to say that reality is whatever the environment of reality around me is not real, I have to abandon the context of what made me even able to question it. Like, questioning the legitimacy of reality requires the context of being in that reality, because I'm using language that I learned from that reality in order to question whether or not it's real. And you can't do that. That doesn't make any sense. So I guess I legitimized reality again. Didn't that make you think of something?
Yeah, but...
Yeah. Well, I legitimized reality again and started to alleviate the symptoms of derealization by having the epiphany that I can't question whether or not reality isn't real if reality is the thing that gave me the ability to question it. Mm-hmm. That gave me the context in which to question it. I actually wrote a thank you letter to Peterson that talked a little bit about that and how he helped me get to that point. I gave it to Michaela. We'll see if she gives it to him. I would wager she probably did, and that you just cut off the conversation there because we're strangers. She doesn't know who I am, but yeah,
that's another.
But yeah, that the idea of like giving it a good long think has been rewarding for me in many 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 ways.
I've had situations where giving it a good long think is beneficial. Mm-hmm. If I might not necessarily be correct, but at least it gives me, something to work from.
Yeah.
Although I've noticed that for me to really get anything out of that, if I need to be focused on something else. And that's something I hadn't brought up because I hadn't really thought about it when like the getting into video games. Mm-hmm. I can't even say relax because it's not really relax.
Yeah.
It's a better way to put it is unwind.
Mm-hmm.
And not in that like just like it's not like a heroin shot in my arm. It's more. It's almost like a meditative tool.
The image that I kind of have in my head is like you using heat vision on yourself, and then like this isn't good, and then distracting yourself somewhere else, and then you're able to cool down because you're not using heat vision on yourself. That's a weird image.
Yeah,
but that's kind of what
I started doing this when I was 13 or 14. It's something that I didn't really like consciously try to do. It's just something that I ended up doing. Was video games are almost like a rosary. Where it's something to just do a repetitive motion to kind of focus on something, not the motion. I call it a fugue state. Mm-hmm. It's not so much like I'm zonked out. I'm being it's meditation in a way.
Right.
And this is hard to describe. I'm sure there's a better way to do it. Mm-hmm. But I'm
sure you're also a bit distracted because you can hear your son crying.
I can. I'm gonna have to take care of that.
That's fine. We'll take one extra little break here, and then we'll come back. Baby's crying. He's got to do dad stuff. This is an Arbitrarium private service announcement. Announcement for Carol Popkin. We've been trying to reach you concerning your vehicle's extended warranty. You should have received the notice in the mail about your car's extended warranty eligibility. Since we've not gotten a response, we're going to give you a final courtesy call before we close out your file. Please press 2 to be removed and placed on our Do Not Call list. To speak to someone about possibly extending or reinstating your vehicle's warranty, press 1 to speak with a warranty specialist. Thank you.
All right. Diaper's been changed. Boy's been put back down. He's dead to the world. I'm a good dad.
I'm going to edit that in post. Boy's been put down. He's dead.
That's what you get for interrupting my hobby. So, to try and explain this better, games are like a mantra or a rosary that I can focus on, and it changes the way I'm thinking about whatever is on my mind.
Mm.
And I tend to get bored with a game when I find myself going over the same methods of thought.
Mm.
I will find a new game that puts each one that I get into kind of changes the way that I think, depending on what kind of game it is, kinda, and how you play it. So I guess it is a therapy that I picked up when I was in my early teens, and I'll pick something up, start playing, and then time has no meaning when I'm in that fugue state. I once sat and played Battlefield 1942 for about 13, 14 hours straight. It felt like maybe 30 minutes. But I came away from it refreshed.
Mm-hmm. I used to be able to do that when I was younger, and now for some reason, when I sit there for long enough, I can feel the passage of time the whole time I'm doing anything. And it can get to me sometimes when I'm just not doing something mentally productive, at least. You know.
I'm also just prone to distraction in the first place, but I get the same kind of feeling sometimes when I'm sparring with the swords. Mm-hmm. I get into that same mindset, at least when I'm doing well. I don't want to. It's more than just going through the motions, because there's active thought there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I suppose if you've been there, you know what I'm talking about, even though it's hard to describe.
I think I get there because I don't get there with very many things. Usually, I need the good long think. I mean, that's when I do those things. I can't be distracted.
I do my good long think while I'm being distracted.
Yeah.
Is a good way to put that.
I do get that way with music, though. Music is one of those things that... One of the few things where I'm mentally multitasking, where I'm listening to the music, enjoying the music, maybe even singing the music, but thinking about things that are going on in my life.
Yeah.
It's the only activity that I do where I can do all those things at the same time. Outside of that, I need 100% focus on whatever it is that I'm thinking about. And you've probably seen that happen to me, where it looks like I've just gone kind of comatose. Mm-hmm. If I have something really, really, like, weighing really heavy on me.
Yeah.
I haven't done it as much as I used to around high school. I remember it was pretty often, like, I would be at a party or something, or I'd be hanging out with you guys or whatever, and I would realize everyone was staring at me without realizing that I had gone into that state. Mm-hmm. Or I'm just staring forward, I'm maybe barely blinking, and just thinking really, really, really hard.
Yeah, I need to have the distraction to do that thinking.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yep.
All right, well, we're only 4 minutes into this one. We might as well come up with another little section here. Where can we go from here?
Where do we go now?
We probably would have been able to just smoothly transition to something else had I not mentioned that we should think about something.
Probably.
something
yeah.
else.
You gave us the curse of choice.
I did. Well, let's see. We talked about what in the world makes us want to escape it. Mm-hmm. We talked about where we go and why we go there.
Is.
Yeah.
On a societal level and on a micro level.
Mm-hmm.
Macro and micro. Better way to use my prefixes there.
Yep. Go big, go small, go big again. I think I told you that's like kind of one of my technique for learning anything or indulging in anything is I'll start like at a high or a low resolution, and then I'll go to the high resolution and nitpick all the little details, and then I'll go back to low resolution just to make sure I didn't miss the forest for the trees. It seems to work pretty well.
Maybe it's make sure that your what you think you figured out at the micro still plugs into the macro.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can ever figure that out with like physics, then we want to talk to you. That is the grand unified theory. If we can ever figure that out. And I have this idea that if we ever figure out the grand unified theory, it's just going to cause more fucking problems. Because that seems to be how science works. Mm-hmm. We solve something, and then that causes more questions.
Yep. Mo answers, mo problems.
I got 99 leptons.
I wish I could remember that fractal joke that went along with that. It was funny, though. What about other people? What do you think? I had a thought, and I'm trying to phrase it properly. I guess we kind of talked about it already, because I was thinking, what do we think, like, how other people escape? Like, maybe we could apply the same questions we just answered to other people and what it seems like.
All right. So this kind of relates to what's going on, what started about 2 years ago, the whole COVID-19 thing, and the suspension of a lot of public gatherings, and most notably something that I am not typically that fond of. Mm-hmm. And I was like, why are you guys fixated on this, of all things? Professional sports. Why is this something you care so passionately about when there are more important things to be talking about? And
you mean just in general, sporting, or are you talking about during COVID?
Prior to COVID.
Oh, okay, I got you. It was why are you fixated on sports?
Why are you fixated on sports?
Okay.
Why is this the axis on which you organize your life? Mm-hmm. To watch other people play a game. I get playing games. Mm-hmm. You're an active participant.
Yeah.
I can get watching a movie. Mm-hmm. Or a game show, because you can still kind of participate in that. Watching other people play sports baffled me. Especially when it's like, okay, you do realize that, let's see, what was happening 2 years ago that was big in the news that wasn't COVID, prior to COVID the thing.
January 6th. That's the biggest one I can think of.
Okay, yeah. It's like although I wasn't that bothered by that. Mm-hmm. It's just, this is not the first time the Capitol's been stormed.
Yeah.
This is politics as usual.
It's not even the most violent time the Capitol's been stormed.
Bunch of unarmed people go into the Capitol to try and say something, and people with guns shoot at people without guns. Mm-hmm. But that's a biased presentation of that whole thing. Go find out for yourself. Make your own opinion, please. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Why aren't people so, like, kind of up in arms about the election that just happened? There were a lot of irregularities here, and no one seemed that people are more concerned about the fucking Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And then we have the suspension of sports and large gatherings, and then everyone started thinking and talking about those things, and my God, I regret it.
What did you learn?
You don't always want what you want.
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, it's like it just exacerbated the problem of people needing to engage in some kind of narrative, even though they weren't educated enough, and they didn't really want to be educated enough on the topics or the issues that were related to that. I
think it's more they think they're educated enough.
That's certainly part of it, yeah. Mm-hmm. And, well, that kind of goes into what I was saying about they don't want to be. It's they think they are educated enough because the complexities of the situation are too great to manage when you've got other stressors in your life. They're not taking the time necessary to understand the situation at the levels that you need to understand it in order to form a real solid genuine, educated opinion on the matter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's we live in a world where everyone is a journalist. Everyone is a commentator.
I think the lesson I learned there from the collapse of civility is the best way I can phrase this.
Yep.
Is as much as we've been ragging on, you kind of approaching escapism from a negative standpoint. Like, this is not something you should do. We see what happens when you don't. Maybe escapism allows civilization to actually run. If you were to remove everyone's distractions, you'd probably end up with like 1848 again.
Here's an interesting question. At what part of civilization does escapism fall into? Because, and the reason I'm asking that is because when you put it that way, I was like, so if you remove arts and culture, you end up in a very, very bad place.
You end up with no soul, replaced by tech.
Yeah, that seems to kind of be it. I didn't really, it's the first time I thought about it that way, but anytime we're indulging in escapism, almost anytime, it seems like it's in the realm of art and culture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some people do escape into politics. I mean, we saw Carolyn do that a few times.
Yeah.
And I can't really say politics is art or culture. It's more, politics.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it certainly has an impact on those things. It's closer to culture than I would say art in particular.
I'd say culture has more of an impact on politics than the other way around.
Yeah.
Because nothing happens in politics without the cultural will to make it happen.
Right.
Well, I mean, unless you're Ataturk. But Mustafa Kemal Ataturk he was a dude. He was kind of an absolute Chad.
Oh, okay.
That's a whole other podcast. So, yeah.
I guess that's the question then. Is escapism good or is it bad? Maybe that's a good place to conclude the episode.
I think the answer to that is it's a healthy mix if you keep it healthy. If you're on all the time, you're going to go insane. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you need to just shut your brain off and watch the fucking Hulk.
Shut your brain off and watch the fucking Hulk. Hulk down. You need to Hulk down. Yeah, I think, like, my knee-jerk, and I've used this phrase a few times this episode, but my knee-jerk response to is escapism good or bad is, yes, it's bad. Mm-hmm. It's not a good thing because...
I think we gathered that with how you framed the first
part. Yeah. You if you're avoiding things that you should probably be dealing with, mm-hmm. then that can't really be a good thing. But...
sometimes you need to step away so you can deal with it in the proper way.
I was about to say, what that doesn't account for is the blinding force of emotion. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you actually do need to stop, step back, do something that lets that part of you wind down so that you then can deal with it reasonably.
And I think there's an inverse to that as well. Mm. And this is something I've been trying to learn and incorporate into my being, is just because there's no emotion in the solution you've come up with does not mean it's the right solution.
Right.
Sometimes you need to think about the emotional impact of what course of action you're taking.
Yeah, well, we've talked about this too, because it's easy to think or to play at the idea mm-hmm. that rationality is devoid of emotion, and that is impossible.
Well,
because you have to start with the motivation to do anything.
I was going more along the lines of, there's a rational and emotional side to human beings. We have that duality there. Mm-hmm. They intertwine in places, yes. But you can't just nurture one side of your being and expect to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And that relates to how you act in the world. If you never take into account your emotions because you don't ever believe they're valid, you're going to generate and manifest some rather unhealthy things in your life.
Mm-hmm.
The inverse is true. If you only feel your way through problems,
mm-hmm.
you're going to end up in a bad place as well. You need to strike that balance between rationality and emotion,
mm-hmm.
because you're not one pure being one way or the other.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's that idea of the id and the superego. You know, your id is the emotional part of you, and your superego is the rational part of you, and both of those can get out of hand if you don't have that ego right in the middle, trying
mm-hmm.
to constantly play at the balance of that.
Yeah.
There are things that you want. You don't want to be impulsive.
Well, it's not just impulse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like using the word id to describe the emotional part of a human being. I think it may have started off, having the connotations that you had, but it's become something completely different. You hear id and it's just pure animal part.
Mm-hmm.
And emotionality is not just pure animal.
Yeah.
It's informed by other things. Like, experience isn't rationality, but it informs your emotional response.
Right. And rationality informs your emotional response as well. That's one thing that people don't really think about too much.
Mm-hmm.
Because with rationality and how it relates to your emotions, it's one of those sort of over time sorts of things. You build better emotional
mm-hmm.
habits through rationality. And you can actually do that. If you train yourself enough to most of that has to do with learning how to choose your battles, learning what is worth getting upset about and what's not worth getting upset about.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes time to cultivate, because you also, you have to make sure that you're not repressing your emotions, but you also need to make sure that you're not lashing out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most people don't really understand exactly how to strike that balance or what the difference really is, but in my experience, it tends to be a matter of whether or not you acknowledge that they're there to begin with.
Yeah, and for a long time, I did not process emotion well.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't, but I'm better
mm-hmm.
than I was. So I had to, and I'm still learning to try and come to the same, or not necessarily just come to the same conclusion using two different ways of approaching a problem.
Yeah.
So, feeling my way to a solution, then rationalizing it, that's not good. Going pure rationality and then trying to force my emotions into that mold, that's not good either.
Mm-hmm.
You need to combine them, use both ways of interpreting the world, I guess. Well, yeah, we'll stick with that to synthesize a solution that fits with both.
Yeah. And I think the thing that I've always struggled with that is that idea that you were talking about not respecting your emotions as something legitimate
mm-hmm.
most of the time. But what I've come to realize is that everything starts with emotion, because it happens before you start to rationalize anything.
Yeah, the book I need to read more of. It's on my nightstand.
Mm-hmm.
The Rational Mind by Jonathan Haidt.
Yeah,
That's a big part of his thing, or his message in that book is, there's that kind of mental image that's been passed on, like, okay, your rationality is the rider on the elephant, your emotions are the elephant,
mm-hmm.
and traditionally it's the rider that kind of steers the elephant, but the elephant's really in charge.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much that, according to him. It's
mm-hmm.
you have the elephant, you have the rider, and it's the rider's job to justify the elephant's decisions. is what he's found.
Yeah. I don't like that. Because what that means is that nothing I'm rationalizing is actually legitimate. I'm just making excuses for the parts of myself.
That's what most people do.
Yeah.
And that you need to separate and okay, is that what I'm doing?
Yeah.
No. Is that what you're doing? No. Ask it one more time. Maybe. Now we're getting somewhere.
Yes. I like the conversation, but the truth of the matter is, this entire episode, I think we've just been like, and then we got to get back to escapism, and then we end up moving into another direction. So it's been a really good episode, but we've ironically enough been distracted by other parts of the conversation.
Well, I mean, we do what the Arbitrarium does best.
Yeah, that's true. We've been trying to wrangle ourselves, even though that's not what this show is about.
Well, we did. We start with a question involving a topic, and we go to the why without ever discussing the topic.
That's true. That's true. Maybe that's how we continuously end up being an ethics of type of show.
All right. Well, arbitrators, go forth, engage in the various escapism that you choose to. Just come back to reality and acknowledge it exists.